Ah,
Okay. Well, hi, everyone.
welcome. Good
Thank
day.
you. Thank you for joining us as we continue with our book reading. We started chapter 3 at our last session, and we just tapped into the first maybe 5 or 6 pages of it. And so we're going to pick up where we left off.
All right.
And do you want to say anything about it
Well,
before?
what I wanted to say was we're going to start getting into numbers and information that's going to get maybe a little more complex. And I would really want to put it out that if something doesn't make sense, please ask a question. And it reminded me of something that I grew up in the 50s with Peanuts. And there was a cartoon on Sunday that Schultz did with Linus, and he's the one with the blanket. And he was in the first section of the cartoon strip. He was asking Lucy, why do leaves fall off the trees in the fall? And Lucy looked at him and said, what a stupid question. What a stupid question. And it's like she walked off the strip with her hands in the air going, what a stupid question. And Linus is there in the last panel, hanging onto his blanket, saying, even stupid questions have answers. And that struck me so deeply that I started asking questions all the time, and I've never stopped, even stupid questions. So we're going to start on the bottom of page 66, right after the little story from Gail, which is what she read last time. We are not alone. We are not separate from God, from spirit, from whatever you call the divine. We are all one. When we keep asking for the signals that show our oneness, it works. We can use it for the most mundane and basic things in our lives, including prosperity, health, and relationships. Spirit is here to support us at every single level of our being. Sacred geometry, space-time continuum. Numbers, measurements, patterns, frequencies, cycles, angles, and time express energetic relationships throughout the universe. The Vitruvian Man, which you see right here, this was done by Leonardo da Vinci. It's one of his most famous, most seen drawings. And it's a wonderful example displaying how the human body is built upon mathematical ratios that are found consistently throughout the animal and plant kingdom. So, what you are seeing here is what is going on in the text, where it says source resonates with the physical. That's the dimension we exist in. It resonates with our reality, and it creates energetic relationships throughout the universe and higher dimensions. That's an important aspect. That means on the fourth dimension, where our emotions hang out, on the fifth dimension, the mental, where we can look into the future, the past, other aspects of our reality. It all works with sacred geometry. And when we use numbers, patterns, cycles, like the cycle of time each year, and the way time itself moves. We think of it in a linear way, but it's really cyclical. And we see same things repeating again and again. The measure, some of the measures that have come down to us, like miles and inches and feet and years and minutes and seconds, these are all divine measurements that actually existed before creation. And frequencies we've talked about, and it's talked about often, frequently actually, how energy is vibrating at different levels, and the numbers that assign to those frequencies can be used in measuring how energy flows. And the angles that show up in geometries, all of this is what we're calling sacred geometry, our space-time continuum. That means how our space, our reality, interspaces with time, and that's the continuum of the energy flow of everything in creation. So I'm going to read, and this is going to repeat what I just said, because Source resonates with the way the body and all organic physical form is created through specific repetitive geometric ratios. These patterns are the fabric Source requires for its connection, working with numbers, patterns, and the cycles of time. Energy flows often move in a spiral, and that is measured in frequencies of oscillation in hertz, which is impacted by the geometries and the angles. I will explain later on in this chapter what we mean by hertz as a measure of cycles of energy. It's so many cycles per second give us a number in hertz. It's just the way frequency is measured. And these elements are crucial aspects of sacred geometry and can help us understand the vastness of our space-time continuum.
Okay. So we're going to go on and talk about the importance of numbers. And as we do this, see if you can just bypass what you might have learned in math and algebra and geometry and whatever. And instead, we're going to look at these numbers as sources of information. We're looking for the messages that these numbers hold for us so that we can better understand their universal principles. So numbers are more than just a way to count quantities. We can assign them qualities and even genders to better understand the nature of the energies that we're working with. And are we going to show them this?
Yes.
Okay, and we're going to show you a little diagram here. So odd numbers are more masculine in nature. Numbers 1, 3, 5, and 7, as you see on the left grouping here, they're initiating, activating, and energetic and transformative. They can't be lined up in even rows because they can't pair, which is part of how they initiate and they activate. That extra one is looking for something else to work with. And so even numbers which feel more feminine will line up, or rather even numbers, which feel more feminine, will line up evenly, showing more balance and ability to work together. They're stable and receptive in their nature. They have their pairs. Odd numbers work on what's in the field, while even numbers are the field. 2, 4, 6, and 8. They hold the space for the work to be done. So let's look at this picture again. And I'm just going to talk about a little bit about the odd numbers, how they are masculine numbers. They're pointed, they're activating, energetic, and transformative. The even numbers on the right, under the feminine category, are balanced, sustaining, receptive, and stable. And 9, which is an entity in and of itself, is the completion number. It's a perfectly balanced container for all of the numbers. Okay. So the masculine is the initiating and transformative principle. It's what gets the process moving. The feminine aspect is what's needed to ground and stabilize it. The masculine, in and of itself, would keep initiating and disrupting progress, leading to breakdown. It's the feminine aspect that keeps things growing, sustained, and connected. The masculine principle initiates and transforms, but without the feminine grounding and stabilizing, nothing would remain in existence.
And it's this balance between the masculine and feminine that's going on so strongly today, where we're needing to acknowledge the feminine aspect more to bring it more into balance with the masculine aspects. So the circle, source at its center. The first element shown is the circle, and it's shown by the circle. The first impulse moves out equally in all directions, the way a pebble dropped in still water creates concentric circles moving outward, always equidistant from the center. This is a perfect metaphor for the beginning symbol that stands for universal principles and a symbol for consciousness. The circle with a dot in the center reflects source at the core, with the potential of infinite expansion, remaining equidistant with the expanding edge of the outer circle. You can travel forever on its edge and always keep moving through time, becoming a spiral, evolving into a new level of understanding. So a circle, as it moves through time, it creates the spiral. And we're going to see more how everything, energy moves in spirals through the universe. It isn't like a wave straight up and down. Matter of fact, I have something I can show you later that shows you how the wave is what we see from the side of the spiral that's moving. So the circle with source at its center symbolizes the highest aspect of creation. I think we have another image here. There. Simple circle with a dot at the center. So if you gaze at this large circle with the dot in the center and let it remind you of your soul within the larger embrace of that which is God and unity. It's all one and connected, one reflecting the other. The center dot is the source. The circle with a center dot was understood by the Pythagoreans as the monad, the initial activating creative source of everything. The circle is a symbol for unity, and with the dot in the middle, it becomes the all-seeing eye at the peak of the pyramid on every US dollar. And in astrology, I think we can show that also. We'll be getting to this shortly, so I'll show it now. Here we have, in astrology, you can see that it is the symbol for the sun. And the circle is used as the sign for God and soul. And sun, as we said, it's also the symbol for gold. And this refers to the highest aspect of creation that allows us to connect with Source and the unified field. So here it is. It's the symbol for consciousness. It's the third eye. It is literally used in our languaging. When you see the circle, the O in one, in monad, in God, in source, it's the reflection of this beginning image of creation. We see it in the letters of our alphabet, where you have the circle shape for the letter O in the center of the words monad, God, and source. It isn't by accident that we have particular shapes for letters that create our words. Oops, it's now your turn.
It's my turn. Okay. So the first element is masculine in nature, the father. A measurement from the center to the edge of the circle is known as the radius. Can you bring that image back on where we were? And we can, because that diagram shows you. Notice the dot to the edge is the radius, and you'll see that is the red line there. The radius carries all the information that you need to define the size of a circle or a three-dimensional sphere. For consciousness to expand, change is introduced by the monad. A perfect reflection is created that is an exact duplicate. Notice that on the double circles to your right. A second circle that has the same radius moves out from the first circle. To maintain relationship and connection so energy can flow, the second circle has its radius overlap the first radius. This places the center of each circle on the edge of its reflection. This offers the second element, which introduces the feminine aspect, a mirroring of the first monad. This is reminiscent of the Adam and Eve story, where the rib, or the supporting radius, is taken from Adam to create Eve. It separates unity from two equal individualized aspects. All right. Number, the origin of all. Did you ever think that number was the origin of all? I don't think I thought of it that way a long time ago. The monad, source, is the beginning and identified as the number one. It's the divine aspect of everything that is found in unity, and as such, it's the universal divisor of all other numbers. Everything can be divided by one. It's the only number that can divide into every number. It's the However, there's an issue with it. If you divide something by 1, you get the same number again. 1 exists within everything. Every single number contains 1 within it, even if it's not seen. Source exists, or 1 exists, within all of us, but it's very difficult to find. It's actually unknowable in many instances. In the mathematical world, in the way that other numbers can be known and worked with. For when you multiply 1 with another number, you will always get that same number again. Multiplying by 1 or dividing by 1, you only see the surface, the other or outer component. Number 1 stays hidden and out of reach. 1 represents the divine aspect and is the universal divisor of all numbers. 9 plus 1, or excuse me, 9 divided by 1 equals 9. 1 exists within all, but is unseen and unknowable. Even multiplication, 1 times 9 equals 9, reverts to the original number. The power of the first impulse, 1, is hidden in our reality. It's interesting, it's fascinating how this works and how it relates to source. 1 in and of itself doesn't go anywhere. In the physical dimension, energy must flow. Energy is catalytic and constantly changing things. However, 1 on its own is static. It's just there. In meditation, we breathe and relax to reach a still point, a blissful or peaceful state. That still point is something that attracts us to reach for, but we never fully get there. Whoops, and now let me get to that page. It's where nothing is happening, and our mind and sensory perceptions are always working to explore and interact with the environment. Life gets interesting through the connections we make. The first primary human relationship is when a baby connects with its mother. Within its mother, without its mother, the child will not survive. This demonstrates that 1 in and of itself is a divine beginning. However, we move out from that perfect beginning to explore a world that can sometimes be very interesting and challenging. Number 1 seems to fade into the background and appears to wield so little power in our numerical world. However, it represents source and unity that all of us are trying to rediscover. Number 1 is the power of the first impulse and the divine masculine hidden in our reality.
All right, number 2, duality, separation, and contrast. As we progress into the next number, we are shown that 2 becomes the doorway to the divine aspect of the feminine. And I think when we look at this as 1, the circle on the left reflects itself, that's when it doubles and gives us the divine aspect of 2. And number 2 is all about a world of separation and contrast. Duality can be looked at through the lens of good or evil, and we can see it as the mixing of 2 elements, as shown in the yin-yang symbol, which is right here. So I love this image of the yin yang because we often think of it as a teardrop or this kind of movement of white and black into each other. And yet, the way this is drawn, you can see that you have two smaller circles that are within the larger circle. And that's really how that yin yang symbol is created, with a small dot of white within the black and a small dot of black within the white. So duality can be looked at through the lens of good or evil, and we can see it as the mixing of the two elements as shown in the yin-yang symbol. The positive aspects of duality lead to recognition of the other. When Source originally separated and created dual aspects through its own reflection, you and I could begin to play and interact. There could not be a mother and a child without duality and separation. Number two becomes the doorway of the Divine Mother into the physical world. It is through duality that we recognize the other. With separation, energy can flow. With contrast, beauty and love can be discerned. And so it's so important to have this whole spectrum of not just good and evil, but it's the continuum of the gray. We live in such an inter gray world between the black and the white, where energy allows us to discern what we are really attracted to and what is thus attracted to us. The baby who is in the womb, safely developing until it is birthed, is not fully alive yet. It's alive within the structure of the womb, but it has not taken its first breath and gone through the separation and transition into individualized life. The baby is born with the umbilical cord still intact until it's no longer functional. It is a critical point when the umbilical cord is cut and the full separation is achieved. As human beings experiencing duality, perhaps if we recognize the power of that transitional moment, we could grieve the loss of oneness and the perfect world of the womb that we've emerged from, where everything is provided. We had all that was needed except life on its own. When we are born and the first breath is taken, the emotions are accessible. A baby cries in response to emerging into the outside world. It's the beginning of separation, and that separation gives us life. Separation is blueprinted into us and is loaded with opportunity. And yet, reconnecting to the source of life is the master plan, not to be led primarily through the ego, which is our persona based on separation, focused on purely physical needs. So our ego is what's born into our reality when we are in this world, when we are working with all the elements around us. This is what feeds into our ego. Our ego only knows this 3D reality, the one that's existing at the tip of the iceberg. It knows what it can feel through its senses and what it thinks it's thinking in its head, but it's limited by the inputs that exist in this reality. And yet, reconnecting to the source of life is the master plan, not to be led primarily through the ego, which is our persona based on separation and focused on purely physical needs. Our life process is about incorporating every stage of growth to unite with the bigger part of who we are, discovering and rediscovering physical life from a greater perspective. By coming into connection with higher self, we recognize this is our opportunity not to leave this place, but to incorporate something larger into our lives. Then it will be for the good of all, and we can know what love truly is. We can touch upon infinity in our soul because we realize what it is, elevating consciousness for this life and the future. It's an amazing process to connect to the larger whole, healing the pain and dysfunction of separation. Separation is blueprinted into us and is loaded with opportunity.
You know, that's really a cool thing because I think we often think of separation as a negative, something that's painful. And yet, here we are in the dance between oneness and duality. And it is because of separation that energy can flow. Because as long as we stayed in that oneness, that place of just the complete unity of source, then there is no action. It's perfect, but it's static. All the energy in universe needs to be active and moving. It can't remain static. When separation happens, there is a difference in polarity and potential. So energy can flow from one place to another. Much of what creates energetic flow is resonance. When you resonate with something, and this is so important, but as we get to really understand harmonics and resonance, when you resonate with something, you begin merging with that energy, which initiates the creative process. This is the dance with oneness and duality. The resonance aligns with certain energies you're visualizing and feeling. Separation and contrast allows us to discern things like beauty and love. Through the experience of what isn't love and what feels like pain and what pain feels like, the emotions of sadness and guilt teach us what isn't sad, what isn't guilty. It's not meant for us to stay there forever, but to touch upon all these emotions to deepen the human soul experience. We live on a free will planet. An abundance of choice and variation is all around for us. In quantum physics, we can't discern reality without the recognition of an observer. All the contrasts make us aware of choices that enable us to rise to a certain resonance and vibrational level, to become active in that field of creation. Duality, separation, and contrast are all part of what comes with number two. The Father still remains unknowable. However, two becomes the pathway from source into the physical dimension, and it is also the way back to source. And in this figure 3-5, there are two circles showing the reflection of the one. the father with the mother. Number 2, as the divine feminine, is responsible for initiation and our existence. She became the first step out from oneness into multiplicity, and she remains the doorway for us to remain. I'm sorry. Now I lost my place. She became the first step out from oneness into multiplicity, and she remains the doorway for us to return to the higher realms and source. This is the nature of two. It is also why there is so much importance placed upon the feminine recently. The feminine has been suppressed for a long time, a very long time, which limits our ability to reach into those higher dimensions and source. Part of overcoming the struggle between light and dark is returning to the balance between masculine and feminine. Father, one, remains unknowable, with the only pathway to and from source being the doorway of the Divine Mother, two. The Mother, two, is responsible for the initiation of our existence and is the doorway back to source.
As the feminine comes back into balance, we can access the Father again and source itself. We can't get there on our own or through domination of one over the other. The balance of all elements is necessary for the good of all. And we aren't going to get there individually. It's always going to be a group effort because that's what we're moving into, the all, and recognizing that in each other. As the flow opens, we have this dance between the initiating one and the manifesting two, the male and the female seeking balance. The intertwining caduceus coil and the DNA design represent how we move in and out of each other, spiraling around a gravitational attraction of love. We're moving into this new epoch where we're seeking balance so that creative flow can happen again. The status quo limits us by curtailing the dance and the energy movement. We need both. And the more we honor all the polarities, all the different aspects of what is here in our reality, the more we can embrace wholeness, duality, the flow of opposites. The two-sided snake with the forked tongue that interacted with Eve personifies the second principle of duality and separation. In much of Eastern thought, duality is seen as the intermingling flow of opposites, and the resulting movement between them allows for transformation. This is what we see in the East with the yin-yang symbol, which describes reality as made up of opposite but interconnected forces of creation. At the center of darkness is a core of light, and in every bit of light there is found a small speck of darkness. That's why those opposing colors are there in these two movements, swimming in the circle, the two circles in the center. And here it is again, that yin-yang symbol My computer gets slower as I move along. So in Eastern thought, duality is seen as the intermingling flow of opposites to allow for transformation. And again, a small part of the darkness is at the core of light, and light is found within all darkness. It's always a matter of our perspective.
Beautiful separation that we've experienced in coming into this dimension. So in the West, we focus more on the polarity expressed in the Bible as irreconcilable opposites. In Genesis, this duality is focused on the knowledge of good and evil. Adam and Eve are archetypes that stand for more than just characters in a biblical story. They're representing the roles of the masculine and the feminine. Eve is introducing us to the feminine principle. She shows us the duality that exists within knowledge as an expression of the spectrum of good and evil, which is what happens as we fall from the higher realms of the Father. As the child is born, they leave the higher world of connection, enter the birth canal, and forget the knowledge of everything that happened before. This expunges what was earlier learned and engages the discovery process. The blank canvas to an artist is an exhilarating and also scary and challenging platform for creation. The mother offers life. When we leave the realms of the Father and the Spirit comes into matter, it enters through the mother. To step into matter, we must go through the mother, the feminine principle. It's not by accident that the Latin word for mother is mater, M-A-T-E-R. One of the most dualistic of characters is the snake. The two-sided snake also has a forked tongue, and that's what interacted with Eve as the personification of the second principle, the knowledge of good and evil. A snake represents duality because of its nature and how it moves with its belly to the earth. The Western interpretation of a snake is that it demonstrates separation in its very existence. However, there are many places around the world where for thousands of years prior to Christianity, snakes had been seen as a positive symbol of wisdom. In Egypt, wall carvings of snakes symbolize the transmission of higher wisdom and energy flow. In the Mayan culture, Quetzalcoatl was a god who displayed the form of a feathered serpent. Carvings of the meditating Buddha sometimes have an aura of 7 snakes, representing the linking of his chakra system to the wisdom of higher realms. The enlightenment process of Kundalini is seen as intertwined serpents raising earthbound energy back into a union with the divine. In the medical staff, the intertwined serpents are establishing wisdom in medical practice.
So, because of the Democratic Forum tonight, we didn't want to go too late in case any of you want to see the end of that.
So let's just go a little bit more here and see how far
But
we can get.
We've been at this for almost 50 minutes.
Not quite. Not quite.
Okay.
About 40 minutes.
So you want me to read
I
one
want
more
you to
part?
continue with the electromagnetic energy
Okay.
that talks about the cycles of 360 degrees. Okay,
Okay.
let's do it.
So here we go. So when I was talking earlier about hertz, This is how we measure everything in the energetic spectrum. So when we're talking about light, when we're talking about radio waves, all the different things going on with 5G and different electromagnetic frequencies that way, all the way up to gamma waves, X-rays, cosmic rays, all of this exists on the electromagnetic spectrum, and it's measured in hertz. So what we have here is distance from the left side to the right side is 1 second. So that's 1 second in time. And you can see that the wave goes up and then down. And then as it's on its way up again is where 1/2 second is. And that's one cycle. And then when it goes through the other one, that's the second cycle. So this is 2 cycles of 360 degrees in 1 second. 2 cycles in 1 second is measured as 2 hertz. So earlier, when I was talking about the way energy moves, here you can see is something that looks like the wave we're talking about. But what this is a spiral that literally, if you go straight into a spiral, if it's perfect, mine's not quite, you're going to see a circle. So source is the way energy moves, but source, that circle through time, creates the spiral. And the way we've drawn it in all the books is this line going up and down and up and down. And that's a 2D version looking at the spiral from the edge. So much of our world communicates through 2D, which is this written stuff, all these pictures, 2-dimensional, and yet we're 3-dimensional beings. So that's part of where we're going in our book, is talking about how we can start to work with 3-dimensional reality and not be stuck with 2-dimensional concepts that we try to apply. So it's important to note that the image of the undulating sine wave in this figure 3-7 is not an accurate representation of the way energy moves. We are 3-dimensional beings that almost exclusively use 2-dimensional constructs to communicate. Books, computers, and smartphones all distort reality by forcing it into a flat, 2-dimensional view. We translate in our minds all the images that we see in flatland books, but sometimes reality is grossly distorted, and we come to believe the distortion. The energetic vibration depicted in this image that you're looking at now is actually a spiral, as I just showed you, in 3D. If the spiral is projected onto a flat surface from its side at a right angle, it does look like this undulating sine wave that we always see in books. In reality, waves of energy corkscrew through our world as spirals. And if we look at them head on, they are seen as perfect circles, which is where we started at the beginning of this chapter, with the symbol for Source God as the container of all. So I'm going to
I think this is a good place.
finish here.
Yeah,
Okay?
this is a good place to stop. And from here, for the next session in 2 weeks, we'll get into some discussion about Nikola Tesla and some interesting concepts that he brought forward for us. And that'll help describe harmonic resonance a little bit more. We'll finish up chapter 3, and then we'll move on to chapter 4. How's that sound?
Good.
Okay.
So
So what?
just to give you his quotation, we'll say it again next time.
Okay.
But
You
this
could be
is
dreaming
where
about this. Think about it. And again, if you have any questions, since we didn't actually, I didn't see anything in the chat. So if you can hold on to any questions that you have, and you're invited to send us any questions to office@iconnectall.com, and we can discuss them next time.
that
So
would be good.
here's the great Nikola Tesla.
Well, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And that's what he was all about. And that's what we're all about. And what we're all about in this book is energy, frequency, and vibration, and the way that communicates, that energy communicates through vibration and frequency through everything in the universe. And the numbers, the universe pays attention to numbers, the numbers of a frequency, the numbers of a vibration. That's what tells us what connects to what and how and why. So
I think that wraps it up for tonight. What do you
it
think?
does, it does, it does.
So my directions to you is notice how you relate to number in these next 2 weeks. Just allowing the story of number to kind of percolate and notice what comes up, what kind of awarenesses you have about how number has a story behind it that wants to express something in our greater understanding of the universe. So, with that, we thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and love and blessings.
Love and blessings. Thank you.
Thank you.